Welcome to the Everything Yachting YouTube channel. Our goal is to help yacht buyers, yacht owners, and yacht sellers through interesting, educational, and informative discussions on topics that are anything and everything yachting related. Hello again. Thanks for joining us and welcome to the Everything Yachting podcast. Today I have my friend and long-term associate, Bill Thomas, with us. Bill Thomas showed me a lot at Marlow Marine about running Marlow Explorers, about yacht sales in general. I would summarize us as having worked together for over 10 years, maybe 12 or 13 years now, having done hundreds of boat trips on Marlow's Explorers mostly, and having done hundreds of boat deals together of multiple different brands, mostly Marlow Explorers. So the goal today is to dive deep on some things Marlow related, industry related, and yachting related, so that we can help answer some of your questions and be here as a resource to you if you need us. So I'd like to start with Bill by asking you a very simple question. How did you get started in the marine industry and why?
Well, it was kind of an accident, to be honest.
Okay.
I was in the software industry for a while, and I had a software company, and I sold that company and didn't make quite enough money to retire. So I end up in captain's school, and I'm in captain's school getting my captain's license, and I meet some guys in there that were yacht brokers, and I started talking to them. I thought, that'd be kind of fun. Mm-hmm. Maybe that'd be a good kind of part-time thing, and won't be too demanding, and boy, was I wrong.
You can't do this part-time.
No, and I think, once you've worked hard and you're used to working hard, I fished a lot for a year and got into this, and, here I am 60, 70 hours a week again, just like you. So right. I think it's just in your DNA when you work hard to work hard, and I don't think I'll ever be able to retire or really want to.
Yep. How do you see the industry having evolved? I'm really good at asking two questions at the same time. It's just who I am. How do you think the industry has evolved since you started from being a yacht broker 15, 16, 20 years ago, whatever, till today? How do you think the boating buyer, has evolved, and what processes in there may be more challenging to navigate than you expected originally, more challenging today or easier today? What's changed in it?
I really didn't know what to expect when I first got involved. When I first came here, this is almost 19 years ago, David Marlow was upstairs in the office, and I was downstairs, the new young kid that didn't know anything. And he told me to go out there to those Grand Banks and just spend time on them. Mm-hmm. And I literally crawled through Grand Banks for a couple of weeks, and I had an opportunity to show a Grand Banks to a client for the first time.
You remember what size that was?
That was a 42 Grand Banks, and it was probably a 10-year-old boat. And
were the engines painted fire engine red by chance?
I think they were white Cat 3408s or something.
There's
something
a funny
strange,
story behind the fire engine red. Bill walks in the office one day, probably 10 years ago, says, I got the cleanest Grand Banks in the world out there. The engines are even painted fire engine red. And I was like, no way, right? Because I've been in the marine industry a minute, and you don't often see fire engine red engines. So I walked out there. I don't remember if it was Rod or somebody else with me. I think I made one phone call. The guy flew in the next day and bought the boat. It was like the cleanest Grand Banks I ever saw.
They were the cleanest Ford Lehmans you ever saw.
Like little fire trucks.
Yeah. No, great little.
That guy was in Louisiana, and he probably still owns a boat. He was a dentist, I believe, in Louisiana. I haven't talked to him in a bit.
Yeah.
But that was a great boat. What size range did we have at that time in Grand Banks?
So when I first came here, there were only 7 Marlow Explorers in the world, and none of them were here. And there were some that were going to be on the way for the next boat show, but we really only focused at the time on selling used Grand Banks, 42s, 46s mostly, because David Marlow was the largest Grand Banks dealer in the world at the time, right before he started the Explorer project. And that customer, I would say, had pretty much come from sailing. So that was a real big difference. So the trend we saw kind of in the 90s, early 2000s, was people that had sailed their whole life, moved up from a day sailor to a cruising sailboat, finally to maybe a 50 or 60 foot sailboat, husband and wife. And then they get to an age where pulling on all those ropes just becomes a bit burdensome. Mm-hmm. And they really want to accomplish the same trip that they've been doing on their sailboat for the last 15 or 20 years on a Grand Banks.
Okay.
And it was fast. A 9-knot Grand Banks was fast compared to the sailboat where they averaged, 5.5, 6 knots velocity made good toward their destination or worse.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a real change. And I really don't see that as much anymore. I think the industry's really shifted and people are getting into motor yachts, especially in the Marlow, because, we've got the speed and everything. Our customers aren't coming from sailing necessarily like they were 15, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we get a lot of people that are coming into really boating of large boats for the first time. And I didn't see that much 20 years ago either. And I think part of that's really the technology's come so far that it's become easy to communicate. It's become easy to navigate. The systems on the boat become fairly easy to operate. So the ability for a customer to get into this today is so much easier than it was 20 years ago when I literally had to learn how to use paper charts and, GPS was really in its infancy. It's really come a long way.
Right. Yeah, technology in your pocket does make this a lot easier. And it's also redundancy. If my main system goes down and I've got Navionics in my pocket on my iPhone, I can go anywhere I want to go.
And I really think the communication has addressed the safety issue.
Mm-hmm.
It took a special kind of person 30 years ago to take a sailboat and decide to go to Bermuda with a little handheld radio and a VHF that only went 25 miles.
Mm-hmm.
You had to be pretty confident you knew what you were doing and that you were going to be safe. And not everyone was going to go on that trip.
Right.
But I can put someone in a motor yacht today and, you and I can train them in a week and they can start on small trips and they can really go anywhere in the coast of the United States in 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say the average yachtsman is really good in 2 years.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Really.
And I believe that we do a good job of teaching them the buttons and systems of the boat within that first week of cruising. And then it's all about navigating intercoastal waterways or bridges or the Bahamas from there that they either know or don't know or need to learn or already know. Back when you were mostly selling Grand Banks here, what was the build time? There's questions I've never asked you. I don't know what the build time of Grand Banks was back then. I don't know if it took you 12 months or 3 years.
Well, Grand Banks was a typical dealer setup, which still exists today for a lot of brands, where the factory makes product and the product gets shipped to a dealer and the dealer kind of has to fight for how much product they're going to get and they commit to it ahead of time and you get what you get. So
kind of like a car dealership.
Kind of like a car dealership. You really don't know what the build time is. You just know that you were going to get 6 boats next year and 2 of them are going to be 42s and 4 of them are going to be 46s because that's what you told them the year before. So how long it took to build, you don't know. Did you have any input on the build? Maybe you could say, I want 2 of those 46s to have big engines and a couple other things.
Okay.
But it wasn't what we do today. It wasn't a full custom, interaction with the client and you decide the electronics, you decide the engines, you decide the equipment and the layout. That doesn't exist for Grand Banks, and quite frankly, it doesn't exist for most motor yacht builders today.
Yeah, I would say that we are, from my experience, having sold, over 40 different brands, I would say, in my time, we say yes a lot for customization, for uniqueness. It could just be a finish that we've never done before, or a sink we've never done before, or a configuration we've never tried before. I think that the company does a really good job of bending over backwards to make a happy customer. And what I'm hearing from you is you didn't have that in your early stages here with different boat builders. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and with most boat brands, they're really focused on building a production boat. But what I find with our clients is, most of my clients, they've either built their home or rebuilt their home. Mm-hmm. And they've built or rebuilt their vacation homes, and they are used to getting the things that they buy the way that they want them. Mm-hmm. And they don't want to spend $3 million on a yacht and have a layout or equipment that they don't want. So they really don't want to buy an off-the-rack suit, if you will. Mm-hmm. They want to create something based on their lifestyle and their experiences. I find a lot of the specs for a boat when it comes to especially the galley and overall equipment in the boat might be driven by what they've had success with in their home, airplane, motorhome, but they know that they want the Sub-Zero drawers. They know that they want certain things in their life because they have experience with them. They're familiar with them.
Now, there's a lot of directions we can take this conversation from. How does somebody who's never boated before get into boating? How does somebody decide if they've been a boater, if they want a new one or used one? There's a lot to discuss. So if you have some questions out there and you want us to make relevant content to answer your questions, we are happy to do that. Send us an email, give us a call, and we'll make a podcast on your subject matter. But Bill and I talk to a lot of customers who've worked really hard. You're somewhere USA. You've worked 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 hours a week, whatever it is. And you've got this liquidity event. I'm finally going to sell my business. I've had a map over my desk of Tortola, and I've wanted to sail there or cruise there or whatever. We've talked to people that want to do the Great Loop. We've talked to people that want to go see South America or the glaciers or wherever. What do you think is important in somebody that wants to do the Great Loop? We'll just pick a topic, right? So I've got a business. I've never seen all of America. I've been in California, wherever, most of my life. And there's this thing called the Great Loop that I heard less people do per year than climb Mount Everest, right? So maybe I want to do a boating thing that is unique, and not many people I know have done it, right? What are some things I should consider in my boat search that you think your customers have asked you that you could add value by answering some of those things today?
So I think it's a really strange time for most couples when they first get into this, because the husband's probably been at work for 40 years and been very busy.
Or the wife's been very busy.
And the wife's been kind of busy doing all the things that she does, whether it's her full-time career or kids or both. But the truth is they spend a lot of their time apart.
Right.
And all of a sudden, he's retiring. And just like you and me, we probably can never retire, right? But we could buy a yacht and go on a mission. And buying a yacht to sit in the slip's not attractive to most. And I think men need a mission.
Same thing with RVing, by the way. We did 2 years of RVing, and it was awesome if we moved every 2 weeks. Right. As soon as we were in a place for a couple months, that wasn't nearly as fun.
So what is the Loop? The Loop is a mission. It's not the only mission. It's a great mission because we happen to live in a fantastic place to make a trip like that. There are very few places in the world where you can be guaranteed to find an awesome marina between 50 and 100 miles away all year.
Right.
That doesn't exist anywhere else in the world,
right?
Except maybe Southern Europe.
I don't think that exists on the west coast of the country.
It doesn't exist on the west coast of the country. It doesn't exist in Asia. Usually things are far apart and facilities are either very commercial or non-existent. And doing the Great Loop, we just happen to have a city every 100 miles. And it really works out well. And we built a canal system in this country called the Intercoastal Waterway. It really came out of World War I, World War II submarine warfare is why that was built. The original Intercoastal Waterway was built by the Army. And the reason they built that was to get people and goods moved from one point to another without going out in the ocean where a submarine could sink them.
Right.
And that infrastructure, you would never create the infrastructure we have for any other reason. Right. You could never build that system today.
But it's super beneficial for us.
It's awesome. I can take this boat right now
and
I can drive it to Chicago and not go out in the ocean very much at all.
Well, the worst thing for boaters is the schedule, right? So when we go to the boat show in these boats, which Bill and I have done many times where the weather advisory is whatever it is, we have an option. We can go out in the Gulf of Mexico from here.
Right.
Or we can do the ICW and get all the way to Stewart and go back down to Fort Lauderdale or Miami. So we have a protected route or non-protected route, depending upon what we want to do. And that's all part of the Great Loop. So we've experienced a good chunk of the Great Loop. How far north have you been on the Great Loop?
I'm missing a piece on the way to Maine, but I've been pretty much to Maine all the way through the Gulf Coast. I missed a piece from Long Island to southern Maine. I haven't done that piece yet, but done the rest of it. The other thing I find with the couples is, like I said, the man of the family often wants a mission because he needs a goal and he needs, a plan. And I find that the ladies really need a plan for where I'm going to be and how I'm going to live and how am I going to spend the next year.
Mm-hmm.
And I find when I talk to the couples, they really want to know, okay, in Thanksgiving, are we going to be near the grandkids in this city? Are we going to make sure that, we get to see certain things? So I think it's very different from a lot of men and women. A lot of men want to say, I did the loop and I did it.
Mm-hmm.
And I find a lot of the ladies really want to enjoy certain places, and they want to plan to really see certain things or go back to certain areas that they've experienced.
Right.
So I think the couples, they both really enjoy the trip, but maybe for different reasons.
I know my wife would probably do the loop with me because in her mind, if she can see land most of the time, she's going to feel comfortable. When you and I have been out hundreds of miles and feel comfortable.
Yeah.
So, there's two people in that equation, and you want them both to be comfortable for whatever their risk tolerances are. So the loop is a great way to do that, where now we can maybe ease into boating as a cruising couple before we decide to go down island to the Bahamas or go around the world or however far you want to take this adventure.
Yeah, and I have a couple right now. They did the loop in an Ocean Alexander 42. He did it first, and he met his new wife along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And then they bought a 58 Marlow from me, and they just did it a second time.
Okay.
And talking to them, it's pretty interesting. And most of the loopers I talk to, they tell me, it's good to be on the boat for 2 or 3 weeks and then park it.
Mm-hmm.
Find a big city where there's an airport and there's an Uber and there's a rental car and a nice marina.
Yep.
And get off the boat and go see your grandkids and, maybe go do something else for 2 weeks. And then you're ready to go back to the boat again. But
Yeah.
if you just try to rush and do it and stay on the boat all the time, it becomes a chore.
A couple smart ideas I've heard from clients that have done the loop is they've told me the Great Lakes are just so awesome and so vast that there's no way you're going to see it all. So one of them intentionally keeps the boat up there for the summers now, explores, makes it a little bit further on the loop, finds an indoor covered storage area for the winter, and starts over again every summer.
Yep.
And he's making an expedition into the lakes, a deep dive, if you will, as part of his loop, because he did it the first time and just felt like he skimmed by there too quickly. And I want to get up in that country myself. That's an area I've not done a lot of boating. I've done basically Chattanooga to Maine, if you will, around Florida, but I've not gone north up the Mississippi, down the Chicago area. And I want to do that, before my ticket's punched. So one day I'll be up there.
Yeah, all the loopers tell me the challenge is the weather.
Yeah.
If you enjoy yourself a little bit too much on the way and it ends up being August before you hit the Great Lakes. You're going to be out of there quick, or it's going to start snowing. So that the weather is the challenge. And I have several customers that do the loop once, and then they go back up there and do what you're saying. They don't do the loop again. They just go up to Lake Erie, spend the summer in the Great Lakes, store the boat, spend the next spring in the Great Lakes, and then drive it back.
Mm-hmm.
And quite a few people have told me that piece from Chicago south isn't the best.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to do the loop, you've got to do that section. But I guess that section, I haven't done it myself. It's kind of muddy, and there's a lot of current, and there's a lot of commercial traffic, and there's a lot of corn. Mm-hmm. And there's just not a lot to see between St. Louis and Chicago.
We had to deal with logs and rain and, making sure we timed it right so that the river was generally debris free as we were making our way towards Chattanooga. There was clearly a time where, hey, you don't want to go.
Right.
And then, okay, it looks like it's good. Go ahead and go. So that's definitely something to factor into your trip planning. Another thing someone told me was, the husband likes to drive the boat and the wife likes to be on the boat. So it was important to the wife to get some downtime in between days. So are you seeing your clients on the move every single day? Now, I can tell you we just delivered a couple new Explorers and delivered a couple used ones where they all ran to Michigan basically nonstop. But her idea was fine to move 1, 2, 3 days, but then I'm in heaven if you give me 1 day. I'm in paradise or whatever you want to call it if you give me 2 days, where I can just be on the boat, read a book, maybe reprovision at my leisure. What are you seeing the schedule from your happy loopers? How fast are they pushing? How are they running?
So
How
I
many
think
miles?
it's, when you first get a new car, you just want to drive it. And
My teenager's doing that now. We're gonna have 100,000 miles on the car this year.
We go to the store every day, 3 times.
Right.
And I think that happens a little bit with a motor yacht. When you first get a motor yacht, you want to go because you can. But I've got a customer. He goes up into Canada every year and has for 15 years on his Marlow. He's had the same Marlow 15 years.
Wow.
And he said, Bill, my goal is to leave at sunrise, be tied up by noon,
I like that.
do 50 miles a day.
Mm-hmm.
He watches the weather. If it's not going to be above 70 degrees, he doesn't go.
Mm-hmm.
And he follows the weather all the way up into Canada, and he follows the weather all the way back. He said, if you don't get tied up early in the day, you don't get to see anything. You and I know from our boat trips, we wouldn't even know where we were half the time.
Right.
If you run for 12 hours, if you get up at sunrise and get there after all the restaurants close, it wouldn't matter what city you were in.
You don't get to experience it, if you're a bus driver moving fast. That's kind of the
Right.
way I like to explain it. When we're running boats to a boat show, we are putting in, long days and we're not smelling the flowers.
No.
But that's not what the loop's about.
No, and that's why I think, having like a Marlow with some speed makes a big difference, because if the next destination is 75 miles away and you're in an 8-knot boat, you're not going to see anything that day.
Right.
But if we can run fast for 4 hours, run 20 knots, we can have lunch
Right.
at the new destination. Yes, it costs more in fuel and all that stuff, but, a big part of this is having time. And, the motor yacht's a time machine like an airplane is, compared to a slow trawler or a sailboat. I don't want the yacht to be the destination all the time. Sometimes I want the yacht to be the vehicle.
Once you have a car, how often do you walk or ride a bike to get somewhere?
Right.
Right. You can definitely drive that car slow if you want to, drive through the woods or
Right.
drive off road.
Right.
But it's nice to be able to get in a side street or the highway if you choose.
And if you're
it's not
going from
different.
Annapolis to Baltimore, run slow.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to go from Baltimore through the C&D Canal to Cape May, you don't want that to take all day.
What's the perfect size Marlow for the loop?
So there's a bridge restriction, and that's 19.6. But I've actually had a 78 Marlow do that trip.
Mm-hmm. You ever have anybody sell a boat to sell a Marlow to buy a great loop boat and then get upset because they saw similar size Marlows cruising the loop?
Yeah, actually, that's exactly what you know that story. Yeah, I actually had a guy.
Tell us that story.
I had a gentleman who had a 58 Marlow, and he sold it. I didn't know him yet. Not my fault. I didn't know him yet.
Mm-hmm.
He sold it because he wanted a smaller boat to do the loop, and he bought a 43-foot something. I don't remember what it was.
I think it was a tug.
I think it was an American tug.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he was doing the trip, and then he sees a Marlow go by that was bigger than the one he had.
Right. It was big. It was like a 65.
Yeah. So, you can do it with a bigger boat. Now, I have had people tell me that, it's probably easier once you get up north into the Great Lakes and everything to have a 58-foot boat than a 78-foot boat. There's no doubt about that. The marinas
easier, why? To the guy who, remember, this guy's running a whatever business.
Right.
And he's got a dream. He's got a budget. He might be new use. So a depreciated 78 for $2 million could totally be in his price point.
Yeah.
And I've got 3 kids that are all going to come with me or whatever the dream is. Why would that be too big?
When you're showing up at some town and there's a town dock and the town dock has 60 boats in it and only 20 of the slips are for boats over 60 feet
Mm-hmm.
and there's only one slip available, you got to fit in it. Or you're anchored out and you're in the dinghy.
Mm-hmm.
Or you got to go to the next marina. So not a problem here in Florida, not a problem really in the Southeast. I really rarely have too big of a boat down here. There's kind of no such thing because the facilities are great down here. But as you go north, especially places that freeze hard, like I was in Portland, Maine, and the marina pretty much comes out of the water in the winter.
Right.
Because the pilings can't handle the ice and the conditions. It would just rip it up. So they literally unbolt the floating docks from this big anchor out there. And they have a tractor and they drag the dock up onto the land until spring.
Now, I'll tell a little bit about myself and my boating preference. My favorite nights are anchored out, cooking, barbecuing, having fun, fishing. So for somebody like myself, I kind of want to take the bigger boat and deal with the cards dealt of finding a mooring ball or dropping an anchor because my best nights are on the hook or at mooring ball, just being with my friends and family, looking at the stars. The party's here. I have everything I need. I've got, redundancy on refrigeration, on freezer space, and redundancy on liquor storage, right? I've got everything with me in my house, and we could stay on it for weeks if we want to. Jeff and Anna told us a story in a podcast last week where they were on the boat for over 60 days. Never really wanted to get off. I'm sure they had shore excursions and that type of stuff. So I get you want to get off to go explore. But, hey, if the marina's too small and I can't get in, I launch a tender and go to shore, So it just depends on your mission. It's not a wrong answer if you like being on your boat, anchored out without people sometimes. If you have to be ashore every night and eat dinner ashore, then, okay, maybe you need to stay under, 50 feet, 60 feet? What would you say?
Yeah, I think, there's a pretty hard stop at 70 feet right now. The insurance companies are reluctant to write policies for people without a captain above 70 right now. That seems to come and go, and it depends on the individual. But it's a lot easier for you to be an owner-operator of a 58-foot boat than it is a 75-foot boat.
Right.
Although I will say that most owners end up with some help on the boat, even if it's a smaller boat. Sometimes we call it a dock captain. The truth is it's pretty economical to find a young guy who works hard to do some of the maintenance things that are required in a boat, just like it would be in a house, just like you hire people to take care of your home or your car. He's not necessarily traveling with you, but very common, no matter what size boat it is in this class of boat, to have what I'd call a day captain, and they're responsible for the list.
Mm-hmm.
They meet a vendor if a ice maker quit, and they wash the boat and they clean the bilges, and if they're good, maybe they can change the oil in a generator or change a water pump or something like that. So most people get into this early on thinking I'm going to do everything myself. Well, you probably don't do everything yourself on your house or your car either. You probably don't cut your own grass, and you're probably not going to do everything on your motor yacht either.
So here's how I did it. Last summer, I had a boat and I cruised on it for a while, and I took my son. My son was my mate. Maybe if I was older, I'd take my grandson or granddaughter, right? And what I was able to do was teach him the ropes. I was able to show him how to wash a boat, how to tie up a boat, how to navigate a boat, drive a boat, but also how to set an alarm clock and get up at 5 if we were leaving the dock at 5. So for me, it was a very rewarding experience. For him, he wants to get into this industry, I think. I think he wants to be a captain, and there's requirements for sea time. So it was a win-win where he got to be on the boat, he got to log hours, he got to learn, and I got help. And I think as long as you find the right person, I think one of our clients did it really well with his grandson's best friend. And it was almost like it was his grandson, but there was a little bit of separation so that it wasn't his grandson. And that was genius, right? That was a really good project, and they boated together for a long time. So if you're out there and you have a disability, or you have a desire not to wash your boat or carry the groceries or lug whatever, right? Think outside the box. Maybe you've got a family member that wants to get into this industry and it can work for you, or you find somebody the traditional way of interviewing. And I'll tell you, if you're interviewing strangers to live with you, it might take 3 or 4 before you get the right one. And then once you have the right one, generally you're happy for years. That's what we see with captains and mates and stews, that type of stuff. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. How would you do it? And what size Marlow would you take if you took your family right now on the loop? What'd you do?
I think I would, if I was going to do it all myself, which I probably would, I think the 58's a sweet spot for me. I really like the 58/62. I feel like it's plenty. I don't need more than 3 staterooms. I don't need more than 2 heads. I prefer a command bridge just because I'm tired of being hot here in Florida. But actually on the loop, maybe an open fly bridge would be good.
Right.
But
we
down
have to
here,
factor the workout. The problem
That's right.
is you and I are always on these boats running them, still working.
That's right.
So taking a phone call, not sweating, is part of our priority process. Whereas if I'm in the Bahamas on vacation, I'm dressed appropriately, I'm not trying to get my phone. I want to be on the motorcycle.
Right.
I want to be out there with the wind in my hair, having fun. So it really depends on where they're at in the work and connectivity process, I think. Plus, what do they like to have? I've had a client that thought they wanted wind in the face. We took them for a ride. She realized I don't want the wind in the face. They bought a different boat. They bought one with the glass up front. So everybody's different. So you do a 58.
I would do a 58. And then what I find a lot of times is my customers who have a 58 for a few years, you do the loop or whatever, and that trip's over.
Mm-hmm.
And then you do whatever your normal cruising circle is. I get a lot of people that came from a smaller boat, and maybe they're from the west coast of Florida, and they do Key West to Pensacola, and maybe they run around to the Bahamas a couple of times. And that fits their lifestyle. They've been doing it a long time. But then they get bored with that. Like after you've been the same place 5 or 6 times, you're like, I need
the lobster run.
I need
I've done
a
it
new
6
adventure.
times.
Right. I need a new adventure. Well,
Right.
maybe the new adventure requires a different vehicle. And that's when I see people bump up to the larger boat.
Or different use.
Different use.
And what I mean by that is, if you bought that 58 and you were my customer, we were talking about this, and you were now bored and you want to go down island, but you didn't have the time,
right.
I would want to remind you, remember why we got that 58? Because it had the crew quarters.
Right.
Maybe we change your mission. Maybe you go skiing or hiking or whatever, and the captain runs your boat to the Bahamas and you fly in because you've lost the love of the transit, but you love the destination and the journey. And then once you get in, you drive the boat. That's what I like about a boat with a crew quarter, because it's storage. It's overflow guest space. It's, I changed my mission. I want someone else to take my boat somewhere. It's whatever you want it to be.
Yeah, and you could ship the boat too. I had a customer in Connecticut with a 70, and it was $30,000. It's not cheap, but the boat instantly arrives in St. Thomas, and it's a long trip. And the boat didn't. When it got there, it was perfectly clean. It was in the hold of a ship, and I met the ship there, and I took it out of the hold and parked it in the dock for him, and he flew in the next week. So, that's something people don't often think about early on is, you can ship this boat to Alaska. You can ship this boat to Spain.
Any 3 points of advice you'd like to give on the Great Loop before we move on? I want to talk about fast and slow next, but I want to make sure if there's anything else you think that these people out there that are watching this might want to learn about the Loop. Any bullet points?
I think early on you think, I'm retiring. I don't care about speed. I hear that a lot. It's like, well, if you thought you were going to leave at 8 and you left at 10, and there's a thunderstorm coming at 3:30, do you care about speed? I care about speed a lot.
I really care about speed. I did not come into this industry with a desire for speed. I saw a 62 while I was on my first boat that I owned in Sarasota Bay, and I just said, that thing's cool. I want to get one of those and go around the world. And then I got an opportunity to run on one. And I realized I'd pull my hair out if I could only do X knots forever.
Yeah.
I need a little bit of variety in my life and options, and speed is an option.
Yeah, and I did 8 days at 8 knots, and that is not for me.
Where'd you go?
I was moving Marlow back from St. Thomas to Lauderdale, 1,100 miles at 8 knots. And, we were trying to save money for fuel. It was just me and another captain. And, it's much more efficient to go slow. And
there's a time for it, and there's a time
that's right. You want to be able to do it.
Correct.
But we did 1,100 miles at 8 knots, and I'm talking 12 hours, during the day and 12 hours at night. Never seeing land for 4 days in the Puerto Rican Trench, and I guess some people like it. There's people getting a Nordhaven whatever, and they go around the world at 6 knots.
I'm gonna passage make.
Give me. I'll buy an airplane ticket.
But how many times have you and I talked about getting on one of those cruise ship sailboats and sailing back from Africa just to say that we did it?
Oh yeah, no, I would totally do that. And I think if you want to go real slow, buy a sailboat. You got a lot to do. You're pulling on the strings, and you're trying to get another half a knot. You're changing your heading a little bit.
Right.
But these things are so comfortable when you're going really, really slow, and the air conditioning's on and the autopilot's on. It's hard to stay awake.
You just want to watch a movie.
There's no great adventure in going 8 knots.
Right. Until you look out the window, and then you go, wait a minute, it's a flying fish and a sea turtle, and oh my gosh, look at that.
The coastal cruising, what it's all about. The passage making is so boring.
I enjoy looking at the houses as I cruise up the coast.
Yeah.
Just can't believe how many awesome houses there are on the water.
My wife does too. If I have a choice of going outside from, say, Anna Maria Island to Boca Grande, I would normally go outside just because that's my habit. I don't have to think.
Well, you can fish while you're cruising.
And I can fish. My wife, she's all about inside. She wants to look at the houses, look at the dolphins, the bridges. She just likes to people watch,
Right.
So I like both, actually. It depends. If I'm just trying to get somewhere, take me offshore. But if I want to enjoy hanging out on my boat,
Is the loop a bucket list thing for you?
My wife and I talked about it, and we would kind of like to do it. I don't know that I have the time in life right now to do that. I wish I did if I was retired and my kids were gone, but I have a 10-year-old with a horse, and I'm not leaving that horse. I'm sure.
Not till she's 16.
No. So no time soon. It is a bucket list item, and I'd like to do a really long passage.
Okay.
There's a Marlow customer, and several of them actually, and I'm like, if you're ever going to do San Diego to Hawaii, or you're going to do a long leg, I'd just like to go do it.
I think we did St. Mary's to Tampa. That was our longest trip together, nonstop.
Yeah. And I've done Moorhead Sadie to Cape Canaveral a bunch of times.
Mm-hmm.
We did an offload with David one time. We left Savannah at 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah, I was there. That was the one I'm talking about.
For that one, yeah. Yeah. That was all the way to Miami.
I thought we came all the way back to Tampa.
I think we went to the Miami Boat Show.
We might have. We might have gone straight to the show.
Yeah. Anyway.
They're fuzzy. There's hundreds of them. There's hundreds of them. Yeah. So in this conversation today, we're going to also break it up and do a couple different videos. So to keep this segment shorter. So right now I'd like to transition to fast to slow. Slow speed cruising, fast speed cruising. How do you like to run your boats? Because I think you own 2 boats currently.
Yeah. So I run slow when I can, and I run fast when I feel like there's value in it. Mm-hmm. So what is the value in it, right? If it's getting tied up by dark, getting through an inlet that I've never been to before during the daylight.
It's funny how different it looks. I kind of gone in. I've been in places I've been in many times, and the first time of night, just the background lights, and you're like, "Wait a minute, is that the channel marker, or is that a light in the house?" You can't tell how far away it is. It multiple times harder.
The hardest thing for me is learning to trust my instruments and not my eyes. And I have heard every pilot tell me the same thing.
Yeah.
And we have great instruments on the boats now. There is no reason you could literally paint that window black at night and use radar and your FLIR camera and your chart plotter, and you're going to be just fine. But our eyes play tricks with us. When you see a light at night, you don't know if it's 400 yards away or 4 miles away sometimes. I have a crazy story. Joe and I were going to the Tortugas with one of our customers, flat calm night. And we keep seeing this light and we think it's a sailboat mast, but we never seem to get closer to it. And we can't find it on radar. We're shining the spotlight on it, and we're changing our heading, and it doesn't change our heading to it. We're totally confused. It took us probably 20 minutes to figure out we were seeing the reflection of a bright star on the surface of the water, but it was so dark and there was no moon. We didn't know really where the horizon was, and we thought we were looking up in the air and seeing a light that was bobbing around, and we were actually seeing a reflection of a star.
Wow. I've definitely seen some weird stuff out there at night.
It's just totally disorienting.
Yeah.
So a lot of my clients say don't run at night, and I tell them, you know what, don't run at night until you're more comfortable. And I never like running at night inshore. Right. And I think instinctively we want to get up in the morning and leave. But if you know you have a 40-hour passage, maybe you should go to dinner and leave. Because I find I'm much more comfortable leaving the place I know, because I drove it there. I know where I am.
Right.
I can leave there in the dark because I saw it during the day. And I'd rather do that and arrive in Savannah in the shipping channel at dawn than arrive in Savannah in the shipping channel at 3 a.m. with tankers moving around.
Right. I've been in rough weather with a tanker. I thought I was following out, and then realized I wasn't following him. He was coming at me.
Yeah, he's coming at you. It's getting bigger.
Oh, okay, I need to move.
They don't get bigger at night. The lights just get closer.
Yeah.
So, and I think running at night, I really enjoy it actually. Now that I
enjoy the stars. I've been offshore far enough. It's like you can see the browns of the Milky Way out there. I really enjoy the starry nights.
Yeah. You just have to be 20 miles offshore.
Right. And bioluminescence. I've been lucky enough to see some really cool bioluminescence where the wake of the boat was lit up hundreds of yards out just from the turbulence. That's so cool.
That's really cool.
So cool. So speeds. What do you run on your personal boats?
So we're usually running 15 or 8.
Okay.
in the Marlows, I tend to run, this boat particularly likes 9 or 19.
Okay.
What you find when you get into this is that once you're going fast, you might as well go. It takes a lot of fuel to go fast, but it doesn't take a lot more fuel to go a little bit faster.
And I think what you're saying is maybe I've got in my mind I want to do 16 knots to save money. But when you look at it and do the math of the controls, 18 knots really is kind of the same, or if not, maybe
it's
even
almost
a scotch better.
Flat.
Right.
It's almost flat. Once you're going 16, 17 knots, if the boat's capable of doing 20, probably doesn't cost you any more per mile to do 20.
Right. So we say most of our customers do 10 or 20.
Yes.
Right. Now we've got some that'll go over 30, and maybe they cruise at 25 or 27, but those are kind of more unique cases.
And I find out in the real ocean where there's usually a 3-foot swell, above 25 knots, it's just not comfortable. And you're not getting there that much quicker.
And once you're doing 20 or over 18, really, it's fast enough.
It's fast enough. You're saving a bunch of time.
Right.
And people can still function. I try to be conscious of the other people on the boat. You know, when you're driving the boat, you can handle anything. You get on center console and go 50 miles an hour and you're holding onto the wheel. Mm-hmm. But those poor people in the back don't have much to hold on to. Right. And it's not much different in a motor yacht. You know, if other people want to lay down on the couch and watch a movie or cook or take a shower or do something else on the yacht, you know, it's a big difference between doing 18 and being comfortable and doing 25 where you're getting jostled.
Or doing 8 or 10, depending upon the conditions. I don't remember if it was you or David, but one of the two of you, I'm sure, early on in the trip, told me, Eric, if you're ever uncomfortable, then this is uncomfortable. Just push the sticks a little bit further forward. Why would that make a difference?
Well, we're most sensitive to that rolling side-to-side motion. The thing that makes you want to puke is usually this
For me, it's
slow
Red Bull
rolling, this slow rolly motion.
Yeah.
You can handle the kind of going up and down over the waves, especially if you're looking out front. And the dynamics of the actual boat itself tends to smooth out with speed. So, especially with the struck keels on the Marlow and the way the chines are designed, as you speed up, you roll less. Of course, there's stabilizers that work better as well. Mm-hmm. Just the act of going faster makes the boat more stable.
It gives the hull design more resistance to be stable upon.
Yeah.
And then the fins, as they move, they have more leverage so they can make that stability even better.
And you're not wallowing. That wallowing feeling going slow is terrible.
Right. So you can control more with a boat that can go faster or slower the roll, because putting more power down makes it more comfortable and gets you out of that area sooner. Typically, you could either come inshore or outrun that storm or whatever to get back to flat water or your protected marina or your anchorage, wherever you're going. Right?
Yeah, and those mid speeds aren't typically where you run. You know, that 10 plus knots, that 11, 12, 13 knots is not particularly efficient because you're starting to burn quite a bit of fuel. But on a really rough day, 12 knots might be the best option. Mm-hmm. You might be burning the same fuel you would be for 18, but there's 6-foot waves coming over the bow. Maybe 12 knots feels really good.
Right. Huge seas. Can't go 18 knots.
Can't go 18 knots, but 8 doesn't feel good. So
right.
what?
Right.
Do what feels good. And that's the key to having the bigger engines and having a motor yacht that can go fast is I can put it wherever I want to run it.
So on social media today, there's a lot of tags for luxury motor yacht, luxury diesel powered motor yacht, luxury. We fall into that luxury category because of how high end everything is in this boat. And then there's another category called trawler, which I think is kind of where our seeds were planted and we grew out of. How does speed or luxury or trawler fall into your equation as to what we build here, what your customers are looking for?
So I've found that the trawler customer I used to meet pretty frequently 15 years ago, I haven't met one in a while. Mm-hmm. My trawler customer, I think, retired from boating. And most of my customers today never had a slow sailboat. If they had a sailboat, it was a fast sailboat, maybe even a racing sailboat.
Racing sailboat, yeah.
You know? But they never really consider running around at 6 knots crossing oceans. It's not what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I really think that the motor yacht for most of our customers is two things. It's a yacht, and it's something that they want to go places in. But it's also important that it's a good second home.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I find that quite often the couple retires out of the Northeast, buys a waterfront house in Sarasota, gets a 50-foot Sea Ray behind the house, and one of two things happens. The boat rots or the house rots. Because they fly to Sarasota and they get in the boat and they go to the Bahamas, and there was no one in the house before they came down here. Now there's no one in the house now that they're down here. They're on the boat all the time.
So it's a boat slip with a house.
Right. And once you figure out that when you're down here in the winter, you're going to be on the boat, you don't need the house. Or if you do need the house, it needs to be less house. It needs to be more maintenance-free house. It doesn't necessarily need to be a house with a dock with a boat behind it. We've actually found we actually like the boat being far from our house quite often, because I like the boat to be a destination.
It's a vacation.
You know?
It's a vacation to your boat. You kept it in St. Augustine quite a bit.
We were in St. Augustine for a year and a half, and I thought I was going to be there for 2 weeks. But that's the great
St.
part.
Augustine's awesome.
That's the great part about a yacht. I mean,
Right.
You will discover places you've never been
Right.
in a way you never would have done it. I never would have driven to St. Augustine and hung out there for a weekend.
Right.
Just never would have happened.
Right.
But I showed up on my boat. We started looking around, going to restaurants, going out boating on the weekends, and we didn't leave for a year and a half.
But wait a minute. So you're in Florida. I'm assuming this wasn't just in the non-hurricane season, right? But let's oversimplify and use the word abandon for a minute. It said you abandoned your boat in St. Augustine. You came back to Tampa and worked. How did you juggle that in the storm season? Did you ever have any issues? Is there anything you've learned from that juggling act of having a boat in one location, you being in a different location without a captain or crew?
I got a call from the marina one day telling me I had to move my boat. There was a storm 4 days out.
Not names of marina, but what location?
We were in St. Augustine on a smaller marina right on the river. And they said, we are evacuating the marina. And what happens is these marinas don't want the boats to damage their docks.
Right.
So we had to leave. So I jumped in the car. I had 2 days. I jumped in the car and I moved the boat to Jacksonville, up around, and came down the river some to a safer spot. And I just left it there I think we left it there for a month, waiting for the peak of hurricane season to pass. And then we moved it back. So not a huge deal. Again, having a little speed is nice, because in that case, I moved that boat a couple 100 miles in a couple days. And if I had a 6-knot boat, it would have been a lot more onerous for me to have to deal with that.
In that, let's just call it 2-year period where, and I don't know if it was 3 years, tell me, but I believe your boat was away from home port for a period of time.
We started in Charleston and moved to Savannah. And again, I was just going to go to Savannah for a month or two, and we were there for almost 9 months.
Okay.
Because what we do is we move the boat to a town, and we want to fully explore the town.
Right.
I want to try all the cool restaurants. I like to go to a new town and look at the postcards for sale.
Okay.
Right? There's a postcard of all the cool things.
That's a good idea.
Those are the things we need to see. Oh, there's a lighthouse.
Maybe that's
go
the
see
first
that
thing
lighthouse.
they should have at the airport.
Yeah,
all
right.
the postcards. Go check out this
If
place.
it's on a postcard, it's probably worth to go and see.
That's a good idea.
So we just checked out Savannah for a while. Now that was a 7-hour drive. That was a little far, and it was a little hard. You're not doing that for a 48-hour weekend. That needs to be 4 days.
Right.
So we liked having the boat closer.
And what length was your boat? Again, not getting into brands.
We've got just a 42. It's similar to a Sabre. It's a kind of a Downey style boat. I can't afford a Marlow yet, but.
And how long can you and your family comfortably stay on that boat where you're not stepping on each other's toes and you're able to work and that type of stuff?
I've been on it by myself for 3 weeks. I like my family on it for about 4 days.
Okay.
My daughter starts getting antsy. That doesn't mean we're not using the boat longer than that. But 4 days sitting in a marina with the whole family on the boat, the kid and the dog.
Is your stateroom forward or aft?
Forward.
And what would be 3 things if you said you had the time and funds to do a bigger boat? What is it you would want in upgrades in it?
I really get to stay on the Marlows a lot, and having that master stateroom in the middle of the boat makes a big difference. It's just loud being up in the forward, what we call a VIP area. When you're anchored out, even in a marina with a lot of chop in my boat, you hear the waves hitting the hull, and making the bed is awkward. Getting in and out of the bed's a little more awkward.
Does the waves hitting the hull make you sleep better or worse?
If it's consistent, it goes away. But
you drown it out, you mean?
Yeah, you kind of get used to it. But if like some boat goes by on the intercoastal waterway with a 3-foot wake and it goes, it wakes you up.
Right. So it's not a value add, a relaxing thing for you personally. And I asked the question because Jeff and Anna last week, we talked about it, and they said the same thing. It was one of the reasons why they ended up going to their first 49 Marlow. Jeff wanted to have more space. He wanted more home in his boat.
Yeah,
he
get
wanted
a real
to go
bed.
Exactly like you, from 4 days with the family to longer with the family. So, okay, I understand that. That's point one. What would 2 more things be that you'd like to have on your next larger boat?
I think on my smaller boat, I don't carry enough water. I think I'm going to add a water maker next. I think water, when you want to anchor out and cruise and not be tied to the dock, having a good water maker and a decent sized water and holding tank becomes a limiting factor. It's pretty easy to carry a lot of food. I mean, between canned food, dried food, frozen food, you can handle the food. Okay. So water and waste storage become the issue in a smaller boat. Now in a 58 Marlow, those just aren't issues. You've got hundreds of gallons of water.
Water makers typically. Lazarettes to store things, or 4-deck storage space, or wherever where we could put trash, or trash compactors, or however you want to do it.
And now that I'm, in my upper 50s, I'm finding that this smaller boat without a stand-up engine room, it's getting pretty hard to crawl around there for long. My knees are going, and it's okay for a quick check, but when you've got to go down in the engine room and you've got to change a filter, or change the oil, or change an impeller, or clean a strainer, and you're on your hands and knees and it's hot, it's not fun.
It's not at all.
It's not fun.
Those little nice grates they put down that you kneel on that feel like they're just cutting into your tendons in your knee.
It's not good. So I think if it were me and I'm buying a motor yacht, one of the number one things for me would be a stand-up engine room. Because you're not always going to have help with you. You're not always going to be able to tell someone else to do it. There's going to be a day when you've got to deal with something.
Now, I know you've been hands-on in your boat purchase. You've fixed issues with your hull. I think you've even added, I don't know if it was generators or air conditioners or different components, and you've done it yourself. And I know that I got lucky in a hurricane and you got unlucky in a hurricane. Whereas I had a boat in the water fortunately did not get any damage. You had a boat in the water that had damage, and we were 50 miles apart. So what have you learned from that you'd like to share with anybody? Is there anything in that experience or story you'd like to tell?
I think the biggest thing I would like to see change right now is I think the National Weather Service, National Hurricane Service is doing everyone a disservice by drawing these cones. I mean, they tell us not to pay attention to the black line, but whether you're in the cone or not makes you feel assured or scared. And Hurricane Ian was classic because I was talking to Joe. He said, "Hey, do you want to bring your boat here and haul it?" And my boat was in Boca Grande, 60 miles south here. And I said, "Well, I don't think so. The storm's supposed to come here. It's not supposed to go there." I actually tried to get a slip at Fort Myers.
Further south, yeah.
Further south, because that was
Further
not even in a little bit of the cone.
Right.
So I was trying to make decisions based on the forecast. And at the time I made the critical decision not to move my boat, the hurricane was going to come. The cone was between here and Tallahassee, Florida.
That's a lot of miles. I mean, how many miles is that?
Well, that's miles? The thing. When it's approaching at a shallow angle, 10 miles this way might be 30 miles this way. Right.
So the gentleman that got my wife and I married, that married us, and was my first real estate agent, I believe he's the one that told me this, that the cone of uncertainty is excellent business for a couple companies. And he says that he thinks the Weather Channel and Home Depot and Publix are all in cahoots about the cone of uncertainty, because think how much money we spend if we're in that cone during that hurricane period. We go get whatever it is we need to get. Some people empty the shelves, so I get what you're saying. And what's challenging to me now is insurance companies, which we'll be meeting with Jerry later today. Jerry Norman and Novamar Insurance going to talk deep about insurance, but they've written their policies so that if you're in that cone, you might not have coverage.
Actually, I just renewed my policy with Jerry. And of course, I can only insure with the company I was insured with because I still have damage that's unrepaired. So I have an ongoing claim. So I'm not switching policies.
Sorry.
I couldn't. Yeah.
Sorry.
Anyway, the new policy says I'm only insured in a named storm if I'm out of the water and strapped to the ground. Not sure how he's strapped to the ground in a gravel parking lot, but that's what the policy says. Now, I thought back to Hurricane Ian and, what we all went through there. And I'm not sure if that exact event was happening again today, I would make a different decision. Mm-hmm. With the information I had,
right.
I wouldn't have moved the boat any differently. Mm-hmm. Actually, there was a good chance I would have moved it to Fort Myers and it would have been a total loss. Maybe that would have been easier in some ways.
But I had the same go, no go conversation with my wife because we were going to Monaco for the boat show and it was going to Fort Myers. We were far enough north. We had a babysitter. It was going to be fine. We fly to Monaco and guess what? It's coming in our backyard and now our babysitter's got to take care of her stuff and I had to get extra people to come to our house and help. It was a total nightmare. So you just don't know what to do until it's sometimes too late.
I would tell the new yachtsmen out there that if you buy something like a Marlow, you just need to plan your life so that you don't have to go through this at all.
And how would you do that?
There's just no reason to be down here right now. There's no reason for you to be here. There's no reason for your boat to be here.
Because it's too hot.
It's too hot. It's 100 degrees today.
Right.
And if it's not the heat, it's the lightning storms. And you don't know that a tropical storm might not pick up 4 days from now and show up 8 days from now. And
so the summer boater,
stress.
We've got summer boaters and we've got winter boaters. So we're speaking right now to the summer boater. The summer boater should follow the ducks and go north. The insurance company almost pays you by giving you discounts.
Half the money.
Not making you have a captain, not messing with your float plan, not having the headache of hurricanes, and you cruise your boat north. But now we get the winter boater, right? We've got people that do stuff in Canada, as an example, in the summertime. Well, they have indoor covered storage places here in Florida.
That's the way to go.
Where you can take your boat, put it indoors. It's in a hurricane-proof building.
Yep.
You come back down after hurricane season.
50 miles from the coast.
And take it out.
Right.
Right? That's a really good way to do it. It just depends on who you are.
Yep.
Are you a summer boater or a winter boater? So you're saying if you're not a Florida, full-time boater, right? And you have to be here because you live here and you work here and you can only do the weekends or whatever. Take it north, go have fun, or park it and put it away.
And I would even say if you live in Florida and you have a motor yacht, take it to Georgia.
Do what you did and make it a vacation destination.
Take it to Georgia. Take it to Carolina. Get it out of Florida. Not that they can't get hit up there because they can. Mm-hmm. But Florida's pretty unique being a peninsula in that we're pretty exposed even from storms crossing the state or running right up along the state. Mm-hmm. If you have a boat in Savannah or Charleston or Morehead City, you have pretty good options to get out of there pretty quickly. You can go north or south very quickly. Mm-hmm. But here in Tampa, if the storm's going to be like Hurricane Ian, I can't go south. Can't go to the Keys. Right? I can't go north of the Panhandle. The cone was right there. So, I have a 600-mile problem here if that storm's approaching in that direction. Right. Now, that is a unique storm, and we don't typically get hit here.
And hopefully we don't have any this year.
But, the Panhandle of Florida is bad, mm-hmm. right? You know that New Orleans gets hit a lot, right? So you definitely don't want your boat in Destin during hurricane season, mm-hmm. right? And that's just a natural path if you look at the last 100 years. I think the people in mid-Florida on the East Coast, they're pretty easy reach of Carolinas and stuff. So I would feel better about my boat being in Stewart or Fort Lauderdale than I do being in the Keys or Miami, just because it's very quick for me to be in Jacksonville on the river or just do 40 hours to Morehead City a week before the storm. But you got to make your decision early.
Right.
And you got to be able to do it.
I think the future is going to be expansion in the state on protected waterways behind locks, where they're going to have more and more storage, because I don't see these boats going away. I think people enjoy it. They like it for various different reasons. I think COVID brought a lot of new boaters in and they're enjoying it. And maybe they want to stay south. Maybe they, whatever. I just think we need safe places to park them and more of them. And I've talked about that before. Anything else hurricane related you want to touch on?
The other thing when I was thinking about that cone and everything, maybe they're doing what they're doing because they can't logistically handle everyone from Marco Island to Clearwater trying to evacuate.
I don't think they know. I think they literally said,
but if they did
probably
know,
going to go in there.
It creates a nightmare. All right?
Yeah.
You're talking about a couple million people. So move your boat. Move your boat out of the path way early. Yeah. And you're committed when you move.
Right.
There aren't options 48 hours before.
Right.
All the yards are full. So I really think just get the boat out.
Have a plan. My advice is have a plan. If you're going to keep a boat in a hurricane area during hurricane season, have a plan. Your insurance is going to make you have one anyway. So you might as well be proactive in the process.
And you'll save money by having a good plan.
Correct. So if nothing else on hurricane, I'd like to fast forward. You said you're in your 50s. Let's pretend you're going to work 20 more years conversationally. Maybe it's 10 more years, whatever, right? And now you're ready to have that bigger boat. You go buy a used one. Let's pretend it's a Marlow because, we're here today. What are some upgrades you would do to any Marlow you'd buy that didn't have these three things? What would those three things be? Like a kind of a refit thing, or I'd really love to have water maker as an example, right? If the Marlow didn't have a water maker, I'd definitely make sure it had that, or whatever product you'd like to talk about. Is there anything that's really caught your eye lately that you just couldn't live without?
I think having a fully painted boat would be high on my list.
Okay.
I've struggled my whole life with boats with keeping gel coat looking good, and it's very frustrating. And all the Marlow hulls are pretty much painted, but my most knowledgeable yachtsmen paint the superstructure as well. And the way
how do you help them with that? Because I've got a style. I'd like to hear your style on the paint.
So think of gel coat as kind of something. Gel coat is a thick polyester-based resin that's fairly porous, and you fill those pores with wax. Right. Often.
I describe it as just imagine a hardened countertop of toothpaste, oversimplified.
Yeah. And what's nice about gel coat is, if it's on a sport fish or a day boat and you drop a fishing sinker on it, it's thick and the color goes all the way through. So the chip on the deck of the 19-foot runabout is better being gel coat for that reason. But
cheaper too.
Comes out of the mold that way. But the paint is more like the coating on your car. It's very hard, very highly polished. And because of that, it doesn't need as much waxing. Remember our parents used to wax their car all the time. Well, now we've got these clear coats now. And you never wax our car.
I drive through the car wash and pay $3 more for the spray wax.
And that's because the finishes now are so hard.
Right.
And when you paint the superstructure of the yacht, my customers that have it tell me the key is don't use too much soap. Just rinse it. Rinse the boat.
So are you a fan of ceramic coating paint as well?
I don't know. I haven't lived with that. The people that I know bought it love it. They spend a lot of money on it. And I think when you spend a lot of money on something, you're going to love it. So I haven't really had a test case yet where I've seen a 3-year-old boat. One had ceramic coating, one didn't. And this one ended up faring better. But I'll tell you, the people I know that have bought it believe that it's less work.
Having owned a service company and run a buffer to the point where my shoulders hurt a little bit, the way that I break it down for people, let me also add, I do have cars that have ceramic coated. I do have clients with airplanes and boats that they have ceramic coated. And, I had 30 detailers out there running around restoring, detailing, waxing boats for a period of time. So let's just pretend for a second I put my expert detailer cap on and say, the way that I explain it to customers is, let's just pretend that the superstructure paint for XYZ boat is $50,000. Do you want it or not? Well, let's ask some questions. Where are you going to go boating? You're going to be island hopping, anchored out the whole entire time without support staff on the ground who you could hire at a reasonable rate to come aboard and wax it for you? Are you the type that loves to wash it, wax it yourself? How long are you going to own the boat? All those things factor into what do you get out of painting it? Because if I paint it and spend 50 grand and then spend thousands of dollars to have it ceramic coated, the benefit is I can rinse it off and walk away if I have a spot-free water system, right? Because it doesn't stick to it because the pores are filled, right? That toothpaste on the counter, I spill something on it, it soaks in and it's going to change the color of it. With that paint, I can just, with ceramic coat or paint, I can just spray it and it wipes right off. So it's a time and value equation to how long I'm going to own it, where I'm going to keep it, and who's going to help me take care of it. For most of my customers to decide if they're going to paint that rub rail up superstructure or not. And I would say 20% of them in the boats that I've built go for the paint. And it's usually the people who are going to be in the islands of the Keys a lot and don't have their buddy Johnny at Norfolk who waxes the boat every year.
Right. Right.
Would you say similar equation for you, or would you see
Similar
something
equation,
different?
but I think another huge factor is, you're going to scratch the boat. Right. You're going to scratch it the first year and you're going to scratch it the second year.
Mm-hmm.
And when you make gel coat repairs, you'll always know it's there.
Yes.
And when you make paint repairs, you can't find it.
Oftentimes, no.
So, it's kind of like you scratch your car bad and you really have to paint the whole quarter panel.
Mm-hmm.
So
I break that down.
A boat with gel coat, once the boat's 3 years old and it's gel coat, the gel coat's not the same color as it used to be.
Correct. Gel coat's kind of like skin, right? You're born with it.
You get a tan. It gets a tan.
It changes over time. So I've done gel coat repairs on a boat, and if you put too much chemical in it to kick it off, it gets hot and it turns yellow.
Yeah.
And it can yellow against a white, and it's very difficult to match that. So when I'm talking with somebody, I really talk about rub rail below, as you're more likely to maybe get a scratch from a fender rub or dock piling or whatever. And then from the rub rail up, it's kind of a little bit more self-inflicted, where my mop guy did something. So I really kind of break it down. I think it's more likely on the hull than it is on the superstructure up.
Agreed.
Because when I go through that options list with somebody, we're looking at every item and assessing the what's in it for me based on X dollars. So, it's good to see that we both have similar explanations as to what the WIFMA is, what's in it for me for the consumer.
David Marlow told me something great many years ago. He said, all boats end up painted.
That's very true.
So you may not paint it when it's new.
Yeah.
But, when someone buys that 18-year-old brokerage boat,
we just had that happen. They're
going to paint it.
We had a friend of mine buy a 57. He did a refit on it, changed the color, changed everything inside, and used the boat for a while and just sold it for more than everything into it, my understanding. So, if you take a quality boat like a Marlow Explorer that may be a little long in the tooth, as they say, and bring it back, it makes it worth more, because somebody can come in, it's nice and shiny, it's all painted from top to bottom, it looks really nice, and I can go cruising today, and compared to what a new one would cost, it's a discount.
Right.
So there's a refit model out there.
Yeah, and when you look at these brokerage boats, paint is just such a night and day thing with a 15-year-old boat. Mm-hmm. And you can quantify it. I think a lot of customers struggle with, can I buy an older boat? And I would say, yes, you can. We can help you do that. The real challenge is quantifying what it's going to take to get it from what it is today to where you want it. Mm-hmm. And, the great thing about paint and these cosmetic things is we can work with this boatyard and other boatyards. We can tell you exactly what those numbers are.
Right.
So, I've got a 2003 for sale right now. Yeah. And, for $100,000, we can paint the boat.
Right.
And it'll look great.
And it'll look like a brand new one.
Right.
On the outside.
Right.
And then you can chip away at other things that might bother you. So we talked about paint. What are a couple other things you would do or upgrade potentially?
I think air conditioning the engine room, if you're a Florida boater here, would be really nice. And we're not trying to air condition the engine room so that it's cold when the engines are running. We air condition the engine room here in Florida on a lot of boats because most of the time the engines are off. And when the engines are off and we air condition the engine room, a lot of the air conditioning is leaking out of air vents and things like that. But it's keeping the humidity down in there. And that's why a 15-year-old Marlow engine room looks great. Is because either from the crew cabin air conditioner or the direct air conditioner in the engine room, we don't have condensation at the end of the day. And we're not getting that surface rust on all the nuts and bolts and fittings.
And the captain or owner are more inclined to spend more time and be down there more often if they can stand up, be comfortable, and have some sort of climate control.
Yeah.
And now we find that leak because we were down there for the extra whatever, and we get it corrected, and our maintenance and performance and ownership experience is better because it didn't break during a trip. We found it before a trip. So that kind of leads into, now let's fast forward. You've got your Marlow, you've done your things with it, and now it's time to sell. What are some things, because you're in the know, what are some things for somebody who owns a diesel-powered motor yacht that they should be thinking about 12 months before they want to get that boat to market to sell? What are some things they need to be targeting down the road?
The biggest challenge I see when people are going to sell their boat, and it happens, it's human nature, it happens to all of us when we sell anything. We're selling it because something's changed. Something's changed. It's somebody's sick. Somebody needs your attention. Something's happened to your health. Something probably not great has changed.
Or you want a bigger boat.
Possible, yeah. But a lot of times, you know, we've got people later in life and they're selling their boat and, you know, maybe they're going to a small boat. For whatever reason, you've decided to sell this thing you love. And you tend to not want to spend more time and energy on it. And if the oil change is due next month, you put it off. And if you normally would have waxed it before your trip, but you haven't been on a trip in 3 months, it doesn't get waxed. I would tell you, when you're about to sell your boat, you need to treat it like you're about to leave for the Bahamas. Everything needs to work. Because when we survey that boat, whatever doesn't work, the surveyor and the boatyard is going to put a full retail value on the worst case scenario of fixing that item.
Every single one.
Every single one of them. So if your trim tabs don't work and you don't care, I don't care if you don't care. Because that surveyor is going to say the trim tabs don't work.
Right.
And my yard guy is going to quote $4,000 for a new pump when maybe all it needs is a fuse.
Right. Because
I can't dive into it on survey day.
Right.
So everything has to work, whether you have value for it or not.
Great advice. What else would you say?
I think that access to the boat, you know, if you really want to sell the boat, it's got to be ready to show 48 hours notice. And if that's not possible, I need a scheduled time. Maybe it's 3 weeks from now, maybe it's 6 weeks from now, but customers are busy just like you are. And we need a plan and a schedule.
So I have a client listing that's still using the boat, cruising. And that's exactly what I did. I said, okay, next 3 months, give me some target dates because when I get calls, I need to be able to book it then, right? We can't go back and forth because the interest dies.
No.
I want to know, okay, the first week of September, we're going to be showing that boat in New England. Would you like to come this day, this day, this day? It's a great idea for someone who still wants to use their boat, which may be going to a bigger boat or smaller boat. They don't want to be inconvenienced in their usage.
And if it's for sale and you just want to do a 3-day trip to the Bahamas now and then, it's okay. But just know that, you know, I just had this happen. I had 2 second showings canceled because of a 3-day trip to the Bahamas. I would say, is that 3-day trip to the Bahamas that important? You know, I'd rather you tell me I can't show it for a month and you go really enjoy your boat.
I tried to coordinate a showing one time for a client who was leaving the Bahamas. It was going to St. Augustine. So we work our way to be at St. Augustine to meet him. And the guy decided to alter course and go to a different port of call. And you want to talk about an upset Apache? My buyer was done. He's like, if you don't have the convenience to meet us where we said we were going to be, I'm not interested in buying your boat. So you really have to be ready to sell. You have to make ready to sell. And when it's time to sell it, you got to be ready to sell. I'd say oil sample results. I would be a year out, I would be checking oil samples. And if I had any issues, I'd have the time to correct them. Usually they're not major. Typically it's somebody, whatever, and a flush or some extra running and maybe another change gets you back on track. I mean, I know we've seen this sometimes on some of our deals.
Yeah, and don't hire the guy in the marina with no paperwork to do a lot of this work and you have no paper trail.
Right. People like to see paid invoices for what was done.
It's a real cat dealer. It's got a real address on it, and it's got real paperwork, you know. That history is pretty important. And I would say, too, not enough customers are keeping a real maintenance log. And I don't want your real log. Keep a log about your family and friends and your trips, and you're going to keep that, and you're going to have it the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. I want a separate book. And this separate little book has receipts in it. It's got the engine hours, things we've done.
Right here on the table.
It's right here on the table all the time. There's no personal information in it. Not one credit card receipt, not your last name, not your email address. It's just the facts.
You're building that for future value for the next guy.
That's right. And by the way, you know, should you ever have a serious problem and have a warranty issue, having that documentation means everything. Mm-hmm. Because we all know with insurance companies and, you know, big companies that sometimes the warranty departments try to say, I shouldn't have to pay that because. Mm-hmm. Well, it's really important. You've got all your ducks in a row. Yes, you change the oil every year. Mm-hmm. You change the oil every 250 hours, right? And you want to go through that.
Any tools that you've found to be invaluable to have aboard on your adventures thus far?
So it's funny. I have quite a few customers that have really strong mechanical backgrounds, right? Race car drivers, all that stuff. And they got their snap-on tools and all that kind of stuff. Truth is, you're not taking off any cylinder heads. You're not rebuilding anything.
Not while you're out there.
You probably don't need all those snap-on tools.
Right.
You probably need a voltmeter.
Right.
Right? You probably need to be able to download manuals on your laptop and your iPad. I find that we're not really fixing many mechanical things. Most of the issues are it's sensors, it's troubleshooting air conditioner sensors, it's finding out whether a pump's getting voltage or not. So I would say, you know, leave your torque wrench at home and learn about electricity and learn about air conditioning and learn about your generators, because those are the things that are going to come up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. I would say that you lose a whatever and you quickly decide, is whatever critical to keep us yachting, or is it just a little luxury lost and we can get home to port and fix this when we're tied up and not out here potentially rocking around?
And I'd rather lose one engine than air conditioning.
Yeah, because you can still make 6 or 7,
I'm
8
just
knots
fine
on
one engine.
Right.
I'm not okay with no air conditioning.
Yeah, so unless we're on a fly bridge.
Well, and you were asking about things I would have in my boat. And a lot of my recent owners have done this. 2 air conditioning pumps already set up. Flip of a switch, flip of a valve. That air conditioning pump motor breaks. Yep. I'm running in 10 seconds. Yep. That's huge. Yep. Because when that AC pump dies and you have to change it, means there's no AC.
Right.
It's not fun.
No. Especially if you're out there floating in the Bahamas.
And the engine's been running or the generator's been running. It's 110 in there. Yeah. So yeah, I think redundancy for both the water maker system and the air conditioning system is
now, if you bought a used boat, would that be difficult to install after the fact?
No. And if you didn't want to go through the trouble of actually plumbing both of them in, what I would do is buy a brand new motor and put it in the boat, and then take the old motor that you know works and put WD-40 or corrosion block all over it, put it in a plastic bag, and put it on the shelf. Because I want you to actually go through the act of changing that motor, because sometimes people buy a new pump and find out they don't have the right fitting, the thread's different, and didn't do them any good.
Way better to find that here at the dock with driving distance to West Marina Home Depot than in the Bahamas without any support.
And you just bought a multi-million-dollar new DU boat. I want the AC pump brand new. Right. If you're going to have this problem, let's wait till year 3.
Right. Favorite trips? North, south, east, west. Where have you been? What's your favorite trip on any boat?
So I was at a boat show 12 years ago. And David Marlow announced that me and Joe are going on a photo shoot in the Dry Tortugas. So we left the boat show at dawn, and we drove an 86 Marlow to the Dry Tortugas.
I have that picture hanging in my office, by the way.
Yep. And we fished on the way down. I asked David, I said, would you mind if we troll a little on the way down? He said, no, not at all. So I went to West Marine and bought 2 poles, bought some lures. We caught blackfin tuna on the way down, ate good that night, fed the Goliath groupers. We were up before